So this is the Alchemists Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
And I'm KristaLyn. And today is a really astrology heavy episode because there's so much astrology happening. And I wouldn't necessarily call all of it heavy, which is good news.
Good.
We were just talking about how we've been feeling since Venus came into Cancer last week, and how some people have been feeling more in need of emotional attention lately, and in need of our emotional attention lately, and our own needs for emotional attention. It's just been a lot. And now we're moving with Leo season coming up. Mercury moving into Leo, the sun being in Leo. Sun loves it in Leo, it's domicile there. So that should be fun. We do have a couple aspects to go along with it that we'll dive into more in depth, but it's the height of summer now. So hopefully the summer fun and things like that go along too.
Yeah. And we know that a lot of you are extremely hot already. So to talk about Leo season, which is, very fiery as well, you're probably feeling it physically, honestly, as well as energetically.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with fire in this, even in, there's a trine between the sun, Mercury, and Jupiter, which is also in Aries. So lots of fire triplicity things happening there. Mercury's air, but
It's really interesting because last year, for those of you who've been listening for a while, you know this, but there was 2 major fires near me. And one started essentially like right when Leo season kicked off last year. So if that could not happen, I'd be really stoked. Yeah,
that would be great.
Yes. I was just talking about it with my dad last night, because it was like, it went from like one burning tree to 27,000 acres overnight. And that was the one where your talisman arrived, and then it turned it around. It was crazy. It was so cool. It was the neatest thing ever. But I was like, yeah. And then I was putting those pieces together last night. I was like, I wonder what was going on astrologically. And I was like, oh, I know what was going on astrologically. Leo just came in and was like, fire. And so here we are entering Leo season again. So I'm very much hoping that's not going to happen. Of course, the energy of this Leo season already feels really different, and I don't even know what the stars are doing per se. But it definitely feels it's bigger on a collective level, I guess, is the best way I'm going to say it.
Yeah. Well, and the whole world is going through a lot of heat related things right now. And when you think of heat as an archetype, you have heat as in summer, but then you have heat as in irritability. You have heat as in pressure, and, the heat of being under the spotlight or under pressure to act. So there's a lot of things right now where a lot of us are feeling a little hot under the collar, I think is a really great way to put it. I think that brings in the whole, there is a square right now with this season in the chart for it. There's a sort of applying square between the sun and Mercury and Mars and Taurus, which is going to conjoin Uranus, going to conjoin the North Node, and the moon will be hanging out for a little bit in there as well. On the Leo season chart, we have Mars at 12, Uranus at 18, the North Node at 20, the moon at 25. Now the moon is watery and it's exalted there, so that might help us a little bit. But that being said, it is still square by sign to Sun, Mercury, Saturn, that kind of situation. So it's kind of up in the air as to which has the strongest pull. This conglomeration in Taurus is overcoming the sun and Mercury, but so is Jupiter by trine, also in a fire triplicity in Jupiter's own triplicity. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. It also has felt the spiritual energy is still really amped. Like if you've listened to our last 2 shows, we talked about them on both shows, but it's really, really amped. And I keep looking forward, like, okay, like I think it is going to calm back down, obviously, but it still feels very like a lot of like ghost and paranormal stuff, a lot of like fae things coming through, and veil thinning, air quotes, sort of things. Tons of it, just so much of it, to the point where I've even been seeing headlines from people who are not even remotely connected to the spiritual community that are like, whoa, is this or did I just have a haunting thing? And I'm like, yeah, probably, because it's a lot of energy. And when I'm looking at the energy going forward, it still looks that way. Does it feel the same way to you?
So another thing to point out here, because I feel like it really amps up, of course, and naturally around the fall equinox and Halloween and that kind of stuff.
Of course.
But we are halfway between that right now. So
Yeah.
the interesting thing is the nodes are in Scorpio and Taurus. Now that the sun and the lunations are going to be happening in Leo and Aquarius, that's the halfway mark. So that's like forming an exact cross with where the nodes are. So we are halfway through that eclipse season in
That
that,
makes sense.
you know, waning of the last eclipses, in this sort of lull and getting ready to build up to the next cycle of them. So that to me is something that's really interesting, just being in this kind of liminal space in the liminal spaces, so to speak. So this is us all kind of looking back on that's interesting, but also feeling the impending spiritual energy coming as well. And I know eclipses are often noted as omens of doom and things. They are very stark beginnings and stark conclusions. So yes, you might find that some things are challenging to go through, but some things might be actually very exciting, especially with the energy that we're feeling of that North Node being recognized by the moon, Uranus, and Mars, and even with the square from the sun and Saturn at this point. That's a lot of attention on that point in the sky. So it makes sense that we're feeling these things, that the nodes don't have physical representation in the sky. They are a point of reference in the sky for the declination between the sun and moon, if you want to get really jargony, but they are known as the head and the tail of the dragon as well. So there's a lot of spiritual attribution that goes along to them, especially in Vedic astrology, but some that is known in Western astrology as well.
Oh, how interesting. Okay, so then tell us more about Leo season stuff and what's going on. Let's give us all the astrology stuff. Yeah.
I'm so
With that
glad you're
key
interested.
So interested. Lay it on me.
Yeah, so we've talked a bit about Leo season already, and that's a lot of the jargony things. You know, the only thing to add is that while Mercury and the sun are trine Jupiter at this point, Venus is actually forming a square with Jupiter at this point. So the two benefics are square each other. Jupiter is overcoming. Benefics in square is not always bad. My mentor and several traditional sources like to say an aspect is better than no aspect. So especially because the two players in this game are benefic, that there is a square is actually just them being able to see each other from where they're at. So it's not necessarily bad. Of the squares you could have in a chart, that's the one you want to have. So we are looking at, again, the sun being the focal point of this, not only for moving signs, but for moving into his own sign, conjunct Mercury, who is about halfway-ish through between retrograde seasons, as we are halfway-ish through eclipse seasons. That gives us this sort of, the sun opposite Saturn gives us this looking and like reflecting upon the structures that we're really leaning into, and just figuring out where we stand personally, but also societally and collectively. It's going to be a time where we feel emboldened, especially to be bringing in this Uranus, North Node, Mars, Moon situation. We are really leaning into our feelings. We're feeling like the one caveat here might be that you feel right more than you are. So I encourage everybody, like, be confident, be willing to step out, be willing to step up, but just make sure you give yourself a breath first, because if you're going to say something, you want to know what it is you're saying, and you want to be able to support it. That's not to say that this thing you feel very excited to share isn't true, but it is something that you want to share excitedly and then help other people understand why they can be excited about it too. So it's, you know, doing your research is a very important part of this. Just making sure you have all the data, you have all of your, you know, it's even better sometimes if you're really excited or really not excited about something, to wait until you feel rather neutral about it before sharing, because then, you know, you're in a space where this is just how I feel and I know why, and I'm, you know, not in a heated position, again, with that heat under the collar, because there is some fire going on with this.
When in doubt, sleep on it.
Yes, I love that. I always sleep on things if I can.
In general.
Yeah.
If there's something you're really stoked about, before you fully launch in or announce it or start talking about how right you are with it or whatever it is, just sleep, just one sleep, even if it's a nap, just let that digest through your subconscious stuff, and then wake up and see how you feel from it there.
Yeah. I also
You'll either
encourage
feel
you.
better and more affirmed, or you'll be like, wait a second, maybe I didn't look at all of the pieces.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting there.
No, you're good. No, I just totally interrupted you, so don't worry about it.
I also encourage you to check out where Leo falls on your chart, which house that rules, because that's going to show you which house is lit up this month. And also square to that where Taurus is on your chart. So you can see where all this compounded energy is kind of happening as well. Like for me, it's happening on my sun, literally on my sun, but in the 7th house. So a lot of what's happening really affects me and my life, but the actions are actually in my partner's realm of influence, not so much in mine. So I'm having to sit on my hands and wait for my partner to be able to make these moves. And I'm supporting as much as I can and, you know, offering ideas and asking if my ideas are wanted in those situations. But it's also a very prime moment in my life as well. It's very surprising. Lots of changes happening, but changes happening around me that change my world. So those are that. And I know the 7th house is always a tricky one in that kind, because it's so the other as compared to you in a lot of situations. So I hope that's a good example for how to really integrate things that might be happening that affect your life, but are happening to or with other people.
Real quick on that too, just to be super clear for people who maybe aren't super familiar of looking stuff up in their chart. So you look where Leo is in your chart, and then wherever that house is, and that's what is being affected currently with Leo season.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Just to make sure that everyone's super clear, because I know they can get really weird and confusing sometimes. So
yeah. So you want to look at the pie slice that is ruled by Leo in your chart. And I recommend, especially for this, I recommend in general for like horoscopes and things, to use whole sign houses. Houses are a matter of preference. So you're going to hear a lot of people talk about house systems. It's easiest to look at in a whole sign system, simply because an entire slice of the chart will be given to one single sign. So it makes it easier to find.
that makes sense. I like it. Okay, cool. Thank you. I just I know that sometimes people are like, what do you mean? What house is what? You know, and so I think that'll help everyone understand that a lot better.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing up the FAQ on that one, because it is. Also, I want to bring in, there's an undertone that has been kind of applying to itself again. This is something we really felt in 2021. It's the Saturn-Uranus square. And really all that is to say is Uranus, a collective kind of planet, intrapersonal, and Saturn, a societal, interpersonal planet, are squaring each other. This showed up in several ways during 2021, most notably supply chain issues. That GameStop stock market
Dogecoin situation.
Yeah, that happened like right around the perfection of that aspect at the one point. So it was really interesting to track that astrologically. I'm not saying it's going to be exactly the same thing with GameStop having stock market situations again. Supply chain, since that's a little bit more broad, we may notice supply chain things, but we're already seeing that. That's kind of coming back into orb. It's not going to perfect. It's not going to hit. They're not going to like actually connect by a direct degree, but they're going to come a little bit close. So we're feeling that onset pressure, you know, just as we go into like the season where people are starting to think about Christmas, we're going to maybe think about supply chain issue things again. But even that barge that got stuck in the river, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
I know, like going back has one of the greatest things about astrology is you look at repeated patterns. So when you see something, you're just like, when was the last time this happened and what happened then? And I'm just like, holy cow, it's been a busy time. But yeah, those were some of the things that came up. And just to throw a general interpretation on this, because I know we do still have to cover the new moon that will happen a couple days later. Like I said, this season is a spotlight on opportunities to step up and shine who you are individually and us as a collective, to really just speak our truth in a lot of ways. You may notice some people showing their true colors because they'll be emboldened to speak before they think, which is why we recommended thinking a little bit before you act if you have the opportunity to. If it feels absolutely aligned and right and whatever, you'll know the difference. And I recommend muscle testing and things like that, but you'll know. And the affirmation I have for this is, I know myself, my worth, and my values, and I use them to light the path for others through self-love and by example. It's
Oh,
a
I
long
like that.
affirmation, but it's important. And I like that it is long because it gives you time to think about it as you're saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just recommend you do what feels right. Check in with yourself that things feel right. Ask yourself, muscle test when you're conflicted. Trust your heart. Leo is a very heart-led energy. And I think that that's going to be really helpful to just know in your heart when something is right, and really exercise that skill. And then build your trust in your own intuition as a tool to care for yourself and for others.
Yeah, what I will say with that too, it's a really good tool if you are someone who gets a lot of just knowing pings, a lot of claircognizant stuff, and it's hard for you to discern, is that an actual ping or is that an intrusive thought or my brain or whatever it is? Do you get a physical reaction in your body? Like, do you get some other sense that also goes off at the same time as that ping? That is another great way to like lean into the trust of it, because it's a combination. It's not just the ping, it's the ping plus you have pressure in your chest. It's the ping plus you have ringing in your ears. It's the ping plus you see an object in your mind. Whatever it is, see if you double it up, and that is a lot easier to trust those pings consistently that way. And I would definitely recommend leaning into that, especially because, at least judging by what you're saying about the astrology and then just in the energy in general, we're being pushed really to do it on a personal level and figure it out personally for each one of us. And that's a very easy way to get confirmation of like, cool, this is an actual what I'm tuning into, this is the actual thing I need to move forward on.
Yeah, each of the personal planets, again, we talked about, Mercury is with the sun, the moon is with Mars, Venus is squaring Jupiter, which is interpersonal, and Saturn's also involved. They're really involved and all talking to Uranus at this point. And Uranus is the flip of the switch. Uranus is the pivot. It's the surprise, sometimes exciting, sometimes terrifying. It is the top of the hill on the roller coaster where all there is to throw your arms up and scream and enjoy the ride on the way down. So that's where we're at right now. We're going through that Uranian process on the North Node even. So it's something that's very much in sync with some divine scheme going on, a very important moment. Yeah. But for us, we're feeling it personally. We're seeing it happen. And it's so interesting. If you think about the way the world is working right now, it's hard not to feel anything personally right now. Everything seems to finally be made personal for everyone, where, and unfortunately, a lot of us were ignorant to this fact up until recently, but, there was a time where different groups of people already were feeling things personally, but now I don't think anybody's exempt.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna pass anymore.
It feels so deep for everybody. It's like everybody's dirt is getting played with. Like,
yeah.
Like all the things you buried and you're like,
kicked.
cool. Yeah. I made this pretty little patch of dirt. I buried all my stuff under here. It's all good. And then it's like Uranus is in there like, just like ripping stuff up. It's very much how the energy looks when I look at it. And yeah, so everyone's patch of earth is getting disturbed, which is good. Like, that's good. We want that. Stagnancy is not bueno. So
yeah,
it's just
it'll turn out, but right now we're into the thick of it. And
I was gonna say, I'm like,
yeah. And so being in it again, between eclipses, between Mercury retrogrades, at this moment in this chart, Jupiter is stationing to join Saturn and Neptune and Pluto in retrograde. So there's a lot of like society just having its moment and us moving within it. Yeah. Yeah. So the song that comes to mind is from Hamilton, History Has Its Eyes on You, the line from that. Just knowing that the moves we're making are going to be retold at some point. And
I think that's also kind of a cool thought though, because like if you think history has its eyes on you, like how would you act? And I feel like that gives us some power in that space, Yeah.
My encouragement, especially even in 2020, was when you retell this story, you want to make sure you're proud of it. So that can help really inform the decisions you make as you're living it.
I like that. That makes me happy.
Yeah. Nice. Gives you power for sure. And you deserve it. Yeah.
Okay. So then, what else we got? Come on.
Yeah. Over the days between the new moon and the sun moving into Leo. We do have perfections of the things we've already talked about. The perfection between Mercury and trine Jupiter will happen. Venus will perfect its square with Jupiter. Mercury will perfect its square with Mars and Uranus. And then on the 28th, we have the new moon in Leo. So this is a new moon, but in the sun's house, and the moon is drowned out by the sun. So for reference, and as a reminder, I'm going to do a little example on the video version, but a new moon is a conjunction between the sun and the moon. So if you have the sun, which is bright, a ball of fire, you can't look at it because it'll blind you. You put the moon conjunct it, even if it is closer to us, when they're in the same spot, you can't see the moon because the sun's super bright. So a new moon is actually no moon. You don't see the moon. And it's not just that it's in shadow, it's that it's up at the same time the sun is. So you can't see it.
There's no sunlight reflecting off of the moon so we can see it, because the moon is not in and of itself its own light source.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The moon is not a star. If you saw my recent TikTok, oh my God, I loved that sound so much. I had so much fun with it. Anyway, sorry guys, the moon is not a star. The sun is the source of light. Everything reflects the light from the sun, which is really cool if you think about it. And now the sun is in domicile. The sun is, in Leo. And it's cool because around me, it's actually, this new moon happens right around the culmination of the sun, when it's at its highest point even. So just sunny Leo new moon happening. What we can think about with that is, with the sun ruling the lunation, and it's still trine Jupiter, and Jupiter will retrograde this same day. At the moment of the new moon, Jupiter has not yet retrograded, but it's stationary. Like it's going, it's going backwards. So stationary means it's kind of poignant. And for this to be a new moon, there's this expansion of self-expression, expansion of wanting to really unleash your passion and your compassion, and really just do like heart opening exercises is going to be a great opportunity this day. You also have, again, with the sun, Saturn, Uranus square kind of applying, Mars conjunct Uranus, Mercury square Uranus, the node conjunct Uranus. There's one planet that just keeps repeating in this sentence. So we're expecting some surprises to be brewing, especially with Jupiter standing still. And Mercury is at a really interesting point in its phase known as evening rise. So it is coming out of being blinded by the sun. When you look at it, don't look at the sun, but you might be able to see Mercury again.
Don't look at the sun.
Don't look at the sun. I actually, at this moment, do not recommend it. It's still really close to the beams of the sun. So just don't, because you won't be able to see it. Also, it would have to be daytime. Just know that it is coming out of that place where the sun is so bright that you can't see it.
If you could look at the sun, you could see
You might
it.
see Mercury outside of the beams. Yeah.
But we can't do
always
that.
have to be sure about that. So Mercury being at a pivotal point in its phase. Jupiter being at a pivotal point in its phase. Just keep going, Krista. Just keep going. This is a pivotal moment. It's where sudden and surprising things might happen, but they're marked. They're kind of imprinted by these phase moments as well. So there's new information or circumstances that might arise, and they might have to be decided upon rather quickly, but carefully. I say this because Mercury is now visible and able to act, but also still in Leo. And really fast in its own motion. So Mercury helping us make decisions, we need to check with our heart, check with our gut, and say, yep, this is the right way to go. So I have this kind of summarized as making the adult choices, setting new examples, and blazing new paths.
Making the adult choice.
Making the adult choice. You know what I mean when I say that. Yeah. And the affirmation, of course, is I'm prepared for each new moment. Because if you know that, you go into it feeling more neutral than you do feeling emotionally compromised.
Oh, I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
I want to say too, for like manifesting stuff for this particular new moon, the means to the end, I guess is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, I have actually on mine, I say practice techniques that help you stay in the moment so you can be ready to take aligned action when needed and be happy in between.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah.
So
And
the means of being for you right now.
Yes.
So this is also the moon of like, if you are like need financial stuff to be okay right now, like those kind of things, that would be the stuff I would, very personal, immediate things is what you're manifesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is that halfway point. Again, the lunations, that happen in the signs between the signs of the nodes, which is Leo and Aquarius. And we have the first lunation in Leo. We'll have a full moon in Aquarius later in the month. But this is the halfway point between the series of eclipses this year. So it's a really great time to say, how far have I come? And how can I just be open to what else is coming in? Remember, eclipses don't care what you're manifesting. They're bringing in what's for your highest and best good, for better or for worse. Because I don't want to promise that everything's rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes it's not, but it always turns out in a way that's supposed to be for your best expression and your progression and your, moving forward in life. So this is a great time to say, I accept everything that's come. I am who I am right now. And I accept whatever is the highest and best for me that is on its way without attachment. So very much in the means to the end, in the moment kind of thing. Yeah. And then
other thing to note, when you said do heart opening exercises, that can be as simple as just sitting with your like shoulders back and having your chest open. Everyone, like, it doesn't have to be something that you're like focused on or whatever. It can literally just be like intentionally sit very open postured all day. That is enough.
Even if you just clasp your hands behind your back, it kind of does it for you. It's a
absolutely
nice stretch.
Yeah. So just to highlight that too.
Yeah. Great example.
To be hard.
And then just really quickly to touch on Jupiter's retrograde, because I like to create awareness that other planets retrograde, not just Mercury. I actually got a comment recently on TikTok from like a year ago when I talked about Neptune's retrograde. Neptune is again in retrograde. So it's kind of funny that that came back up. But they were like, Neptune retrograde. And I didn't respond on that because it was from a year ago. But yes, Neptune retrograde, all of them except the moon and the sun retrograde, which is fascinating. And it's just this great addition of nuance to the cycles of life. And Jupiter's turn has come. So Jupiter is going to retrograde between July 28th and November 23rd. That is the period of time that Jupiter will be retrograding. It began, it's
such a long time.
No, it's a slow time. Yeah. The planets are not fast when they're retrograding. They are backtracking, but that's kind of okay because it gives you a moment to take a breath. It's like your pit stop on the marathon. And that's, earlier this year, everybody was like, everything's moving so fast. Everything just happens and I can't keep up. All the planets were direct. That was a lot. And now we have them kind of taking turns going back into retrograde and coming back out. And it's more of a mitigated situation again.
It was drastic. It's very noticeable.
Yeah, it was very noticeable. So we have the pre-shadow started on May 4th through July 28th. That's when it covered, when Jupiter covered the degrees that's going to be recovered during this retrograde. And then on November 23rd, Jupiter will station direct again until Valentine's Day 2023, when the degrees will finally be covered for the final time and we move forward into new things with Jupiter.
What is the characteristics of Jupiter retrograde? So everyone knows.
So Jupiter is about expansion. Jupiter is jovial, right? Jupiter also rules Thursdays. In case you really like Thursdays like I do. But it's great to think about internal expansion, because now that Jupiter is going inwards or turning back, we're kind of being reflective and we're thinking about all the expansion that has happened. And so it's like when you ransack a room to find something and then you go and you clean it all up and you make it better than it was before, because you had this explosive energy that now you get to say, okay, this happened. Here's all the stuff that I can now see. Or when you have a lot of new projects at once, and then some of them are completed and you can go back and sort of take stock of all of those things. So Jupiter is I consider Jupiter to be quite a spiritual planet. It is the traditional ruler of Pisces. And so I recommend, very much similar to Neptune retrograde, even more personal, just what are your own spiritual rituals, your own practices that you do, and how can you become more still in them, find stillness, find your center, that kind of thing, to go along with your daily, things that reflect your worldview. How can you go inward and say, okay, what I have within is what is reflected without. So if I don't like what I'm seeing in the world right now, what's within my control for my perception, for my outlook, for my mindset, that can at least control a little bit more of that. And I know there are some things that are intrapersonal and out of our realm of influence, but in your daily life and in your, even in your like weekly, monthly, whatever your routine and your little microcosm of the world, you have that ability to find that space.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It is definitely a time. It's funny because what I was just tuning into and feeling, I even had to write it down. I had to like pull my phone up because I was like, okay, brain, I get it. I will write it down to make my guides happy and have them stop poking me. Um, is it is a time to structure or find structure in spiritual practices again, which
Mhm.
you don't have to have a set structure. It's just finding things that do feel good and do work. So that is not to say like find your daily routine and stick to it by any means. It's saying, oh, today you want to work with cards. How do you personally work with cards? What exactly,
Mhm.
like, what is your, when you do this, what is your personal ritual to get it to get work the best for you? That's
Mhm.
what it just feels like on.
Yep.
So, and I think a lot of you will structure in more spiritual daily routines. I think that's something that is going to be pretty common, but overall it's just finding those structures so that the structure can hold you while you're doing the spiritual stuff. It
Mhm.
feels very supportive and loving.
Yeah, Jupiter is actually one of the energies of planets that's related to the Christ energy the most.
Yeah.
Saturn is the boundary of the material world, which is, of course, very Saturnian, right? But Jupiter
Mhm.
is the translator between that and the human planets or the personal planets. So you have that wanting to really show compassion. I always refer to Jupiter in archetype as the ghost of Christmas present. And the thing that the Ghost of Christmas Present says is, come in and know me better, man. And I love that so much. Come in and know me better. With this in retrograde, go in and know yourself better.
Mhm.
And
Perfect.
that's in the most thorough way that you can. Because when you know what your values are, when you know what your beliefs are, then
Mhm.
you educate your entire world.
It's interesting too because like Jupiter is Zeus if we're talking about like ancient like that's
Mhm.
the energy. But what I think people get wrong a lot of the time is the notion of like a good ruler of the gods would be the bridge
Mhm.
between humanity and gods. It would be come in and know us better, and we're going to come to you and know you better, and there's going to be a mutual thing. It's like the best monarch ever sort of situation. King Ulrich
Yeah.
the Kind. Just
Mhm.
gonna throw that in there for you. um but yeah, that's definitely remind me, I need to tell you something about that book. Sorry. I'm so sorry for everyone who's listening, but I needed to touch on that for Krista.
For reference, the
Um,
book is So This Is Ever After, which highly
yes,
recommend.
it's
Yeah.
fabulous. It's so good. If you need a little bit of an escape from the dystopia we find ourselves in, read
That
it.
one. Mhm.
Um, but anyway, yeah. So it is that benevolent sort of ruling energy where you can go and they will handle things for you. You know, Jupiter will
Mhm.
handle things for you, but also wants you to know them and they know you. And there's just
Yeah.
this mutual
It's that
energy there.
participation with
It is.
the divine.
It's
Yeah,
a
I love it.
holding hands.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in and
Yeah.
listening. We do still have a couple spots open on our Greece trip. Not a lot, and I'm going to be
Yeah.
really clear on that. Not a lot at all. So if you have been kicking it around in your head and you're not sure if you want to go, I would definitely ask for validation, signs, or affirmation from your guides if it is something that is in your alignment, and dive in on that because we are running out. But the cool thing is, because we're running out, the trip is actually less expensive for everyone. The more
Yeah.
people who come, the price goes down. So yeah, pretty awesome. Really neat for everybody involved. So definitely, we really would love for you all to come with us, like a
It's
lot.
gonna be so fun. You know,
Please
speaking of
come.
Zeus,
Right?
we will be
Speaking of,
connecting to a lot of the
yeah.
divine energies there. And, I want to point out, because it's been on my heart a lot lately, I guess,
Mhm.
to talk in ways that help people who are exploring spirituality, coming outside of the Christian foundational upbringing inside of a church.
Mhm.
We will be, anybody who feels like they can't come because we're going to be exploring deities, don't worry, there's a both and there. I'm going to be posting a video on TikTok that explains it in a couple days, but don't feel like you can't come or that you will feel ostracized or, excluded or uncomfortable, because Emily and I have a range of ability to include everybody. And I think it's going to be really fun. And I can't wait to explain and help and answer anything that you've got going on in that sphere. It's
Mhm.
definitely just as expansive. So
And I
it is a
can
trip for
personally,
everyone.
yeah, and I can personally guarantee that everyone who comes is going to get what they need out
Yes.
of it.
Mhm.
period.
Yeah.
That is our intention with the entire space. It's an ancient wisdom retreat. Like that's what we're calling it, because it is a retreat where you're going to get the ancient wisdom you need to move forward in your life. End of sentence. And whatever that looks like for you, you'll receive it. It just is going to be what it is. So we're really excited. So please come with us.
Yes. It's gonna be
fun. And again, this is the first time we've ever offered a like psychic learning, astrology learning experience with us in person ever. So it's a really big deal. We are trying to do trips like this annually. We're going to hopefully hold space for that, but just to highlight it, like this is the first time, and especially not for this long. Like we do speaking opportunities essentially on occasion, and that's like kind of a learn in person from us, but this is like, you can hang out with us and you'll get to sit next to us at dinner and talk to us about stuff.
Or just chill out on a ferry ride for it's a long ferry ride. We're going to have a really good time on that.
Right. Or go swim in the Aegean Sea with us, please. Yeah. Let's go do that.
Yeah.
Which is just going to be incredible. I actually did a dream about swimming in the ocean last night, which I didn't realize until I just said that. That's kind of fun. Okay. Anyway, validation. So that's what we got going on. We really appreciate you all. Hold space for yourself. Hold space for yourself. In this.
Yes.
Unfortunately, especially with this Venus Cancer situation, everyone needs to hold space for themselves because no one has the capacity to hold space for each other. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, we appreciate you all so very much. And we hope that you take the rest of the day or the week or until the next time you talk to us, and you go make some magic.
It's so funny. My mom told me the other day, hi mom, that I actually do a terrible job at this. So I apologize to anybody out there who's cringing right now, but I'm doing my best.
Oh, it's so funny. Oh, other thing, really, really quick. Hopefully you guys all haven't turned to that. We are actually going to book Gowns and Crowns at the end of August. I think they're out of tickets and all of that, but just to like highlight that we are going to bookish events too, and we will post videos and those sort of things to take you into those places along with us. It just seems important that we highlight that a little bit because it's going to be really cool and really transformative, and we're doing everything in our power to bring more of that wonderful, beautiful fantasy element into spirituality so that it feels more magical and fun on your day-to-day basis. So just wanted to highlight that really quick. If anyone has questions on that, again, you can email us or comment on the video. But okay, bye everyone.
Awesome. Bye.